Sorry. All right, why don't we get started for tonight? We have a lot to get through, and it will be important that I get through it. Because, we're at week 9 already, and we are starting Genesis 7. So if we're going to get to any good, reasonable stopping point at week 13, we need to start getting through some stuff and, still talk, ask questions. Participation is always good. I just need to, I need to tighten some stuff up, and that's fine. And about the workbooks, I'm not abandoning the workbooks, just so you know. I plan to continue using them as much as I can. It's just that as we decided to split Genesis into 2, different series, the stuff that the book being geared for doing a run through one series, 13 weeks through all 50 chapters, every week the content hasn't been perfectly aligned, so keep bringing them. I'm not abandoning them, but you probably won't need the book too much tonight at all. So, but that's okay. So last week we mostly talked about Noah prepping for the flood. This week we are going to talk about the flood and the aftermath of the flood. So we got some stuff to cover, but I think we can do it. So why don't we open up in prayer and we can get started. Lord, we thank you for everyone who was able to make it out tonight. Just pray you'd be with us during this time. Help us to get through the things that we need to get through, and help us to understand and see what's in your word, see what you have for us, what we can learn about you, the world, and our relationship and our place in all of that. So we just pray you'd be with us. Help us as we study your word. In your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. All right, besides the flood, what is the worst natural disaster you know of, just generally? Okay. Any one in particular that came to mind? Pompeii's a big one. Yeah. I work with someone who just went to Rome, and they saw they have some of the bodies in the museum that are turned to ash. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. / dark. Yeah, any other big natural disasters you know of? Well, the iceberg was natural, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if Noah's flood technically counts as a natural disaster. It's more of a supernatural disaster, but yeah, okay. Yeah. Fortunately, we're pretty blessed in this area as far as natural disasters go. We don't really get earthquakes, tornadoes, anything like that. No wildfires, so yeah, but still water-based stuff. The most recent one for me, it was odd. It was Irene. That was not that bad for me at my house in Aston. I sort of knew it was raining. It was okay, it rained. And then when I went to the museum where I worked on, the bank of a river, they just lost the entire first floor. Water was it was crazy. We had security footage of the whole thing. People almost got seriously injured. They spent about 2 years recovering from that. Yeah, water is dangerous, and we're going to look at that tonight. So most of the reading will be in large chunks because we're doing it's a narrative, so there's no sense in breaking things up. And I won't really have a ton to say about each section. I have certain things I want to point out. We can discuss things. The text is mostly self-explanatory, except for some little key details I'll point out. As far as any of the super technical stuff that some of you guys might be interested in, as far as how all this worked and just like the science behind it, that is where our website will shine this week. It is like half a dozen answers in Genesis links, a video about the ark and the flood, and they've done extensive research in that, so they can answer a lot of that much better than I could during Bible study. So we're just going to read Genesis chapter 7, and I'll get your thoughts from there. Genesis chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. Of fowls, also of the air by sevens, the male and female, to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with them, into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 7th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, all the cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, every fowl after his kind, every bird after his sort, they all went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. That's an important line. We'll get back to that. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lifted above the earth. The waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. All flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beasts, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, and in whose nostrils was the breath of life, and all that was in the land, dry land, died. Every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. All right, so that was a lot of text, but I think you can see why we just kind of ran through it. But there's a lot there. What jumps out at you? What are your opening thoughts or questions?
The second of each animal,
Yeah. Yeah, did you know that? Had you heard, she mentioned the sevens of animals?
Of the clean ones, and then the unclean was just 2.
Yeah.
The important second things.
Yeah. And it happens 7 days, it does some animals by 7, and then immediately it's 7 days, I'll send rain. There's definitely a 7 thing going on, and, we'll see what happens with the animals. But, yeah.
So assuming that Noah didn't have any aquariums in his...
No, so Noah does not seem to be bringing fish.
So they mostly, that's why they survived the night, they survived.
Yeah, I would imagine it would still be I don't know that it would have been a perfectly fine, pleasant time for all the fish around. Yeah, even when you consider the difference between salt water and fresh water, and what's happening there exactly, There's probably a lot of death, but yeah,
He never seems to mention that at all.
no, right,
Because it's always creepeth and in the end.
yeah. Yeah, so birds, land animals, yeah. Yeah, anything else that jumped out at you?
He shut them in.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll hit on that, but yeah, the Lord closes up the ark, which is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so you seem to have like the type of spring fountains, geyser type things. So yeah, there's tons of groundwater, still, and that seems to go up. Some people even speculate there's like even possible like volcanic things happen, just like everything that is supposed to be under the earth comes out, everything that's supposed to stay above the earth comes down, and it's just kind of like a complete collapse of the ordering of Genesis 1,
So it wasn't necessarily rain, it was water. Like, it didn't necessarily come from the sky, it could just come up.
Oh, it's both.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely raining. And of course, if we remember the details from Genesis 2, at that time, rain was not the intended way God was going to water the earth. It was this interesting mist thing going on. Yeah, and some people point to what's referred to as the firmament. Some people just take it as like, oh, that's the dome, what we perceive as a dome, like the atmosphere. Some people believe that there was actually that the waters above referred to here, that there was actually some sort of like heavier atmosphere water vapor thing going on that would have helped with the mist process, but it's a bit of speculation, but yeah, so rain, springs, geysers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll see once we get to after the flood, like things change in creation. And if you do end up looking at some of that Answers in Genesis stuff, they do have even just, I put up an article about global evidence of the flood, and the landscape of the earth just changes completely, as you would expect from such a cataclysm. Yeah, I would have to dig in a little bit, because it's clear even just at that base read through, there's tons of repetition of themes and ideas just kind of like layering on top of themselves. Now, we won't have time to get to it tonight, but those chiasms we talked about, that poetic structure, the entire flood story is one enormous chiasm. And I was going to write it up on the whiteboard and just kind of like try to show you. I don't even know if it'll fit on the whiteboard, because it's like a several chapter story. But either way, I'll find a way to get that information. So there's definitely something going on with the poetic structure, the way it keeps repeating and like changing the theme and repeating, and something going on. But yeah, my notes on it. So we kind of already talked about this. Verse 2, you have 7 of the clean animals, and it's not really a spoiler, it's not a huge detail. After the flood, Noah continues the worship of God with sacrifice. So you're bringing extra clean animals for that. And I don't know, based on the reading of the text, I don't know if that's, so okay, let's say you bring lambs, like a clean animal. Does that mean he brought 7? He needs 2 to propagate the species so he can sacrifice 5? Or were there already 2 by 2 and now you bring an additional 7? So are there 9? Are there 7? I don't know. Not really an important detail, but that was just what I was thinking. And yeah, verse 4, we saw that they had a week's notice once the ark was complete. So, whether you want to think, did God wait until Noah finished the ark? Did God just providentially know when Noah would finish the ark, and not important. But after the ark is finished, it's go time.
He didn't give the people every possible chance.
Oh yeah, they possibly had up to 120 years as Noah begins building. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you didn't get in the 120 years, the last week is probably unlikely. And not really the topic of tonight, but First Peter refers to, or First or Second Peter refers to Noah as a preacher of righteousness. The idea that he's not just, oh, God is bringing judgment, let me just go off to the woods, I'm going to do my own thing, build my bunker. It seems that he is actively encouraging people to repent in the face of coming judgment, and then, ultimately they don't, but that element is there. So verse 6, we see that, and it crops up again in the chapter, but Noah is 600 years old when the flood waters was upon the earth. We talked briefly about the long ages. I also put up an article about that's pretty interesting. But aside from old ages, that's wild. But it does serve as a useful timestamp, because you see how old he is, and then it gives you the day and month when the flood happens. And we're going to see in the later chapters, when the flood rescinds, another timestamp is given, and it gives you a better chronology of exactly how long all this is taking. Yeah, we talked about the fountains of the deep. The Lord shut them in, verse 16. And I just want you to hang on to that until closer to the end. The text will cover later. That'll play a bigger part. Like that, it doesn't seem like a big detail, but I think it will end up being a big detail and really speaks to the character of Noah. So we'll talk about that. Verse 12 has the rain lasting 40 days, 40 nights. You're probably familiar with that if you ever know the story of Noah's Ark. They went 2 by 2, 40 days, 40 nights. So you know that. And verse 24 mentions that the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So it's only raining for 40 days only, like that's not a big deal. And then you have 150 days, I guess, post-rain, where you just have earth is still just covered in water. Like water does not recede that quickly, especially when it's catastrophic rain mixed with groundwater, mixed with who knows what else. So it's a big problem. I think we can say that confidently. Anything on that chapter before we move on? Yeah, no, the skeptics don't buy any of it. And me and you can have a fun conversation after. I got some interesting thing I was researching, but it's not well formed enough for official teaching.
And so they spent another 150 more days in Ark, probably.
Oh, we will see. It's quite an ordeal. All right, chapter 8. And again, we are reading just chapter 8. And I'll get your thoughts. Chapter 8, verse 1. And God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. The waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the rain of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. Came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent the dove forth, the dove out of the ark. The dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass, in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, in the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly upon the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more living thing as I have done, every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Again, a lot of information, but what jumps out at you there? Oh, yeah, I don't know off the top of my... Well, so the first month, Rosh Hashanah, typically falls in September, I believe, so should be like somewhere in the middle of September for us, Yeah. I guess that's assuming he's using a Jewish, is Moses writing the first month based on his calendar that he now has, or Noah's, but probably the Jewish calendar.
In verse 13, and it came to pass in the 601st year. Did that mean 600 days?
No, so that's a reference back to Noah's life, because the floods came when he was 600. Yeah, so now he's 601. Yeah. All right. He did. Yeah, I'm sure it was magical. Well, I mean, really, after you turn 600, that's the big one. 601, it's like,
So, where do you think the water went?
away.
I mean, evaporation takes a lot longer than that probably.
Yeah.
And the ground, even when we have floods, sticks around a while because the ground is soaked so much. So
Yeah. So there are a few factors here. One, you definitely have evaporation. You definitely have water going back to its sources. So looking just verse 1. So at the last phrase there, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. This is a very interesting line, though it could be just taken as a throwaway line. So if you know, and I think we might have talked about this at Genesis 1, in Hebrew, the word wind is ruach, which can either mean breath, wind, or spirit. So the world is formless and void, darkness is upon the face of the deep, and the ruach of God, the Spirit of God, it gets interpreted there, is hovering or moving over the waters. And it's the presence of the Spirit of God that that's where creation begins, immediately after it's let there be light. And as God sort of returns the earth to formless and void in judgment, as he just, the earth is just, it's water again. It's the same dark abyss. And you have this wind. So I don't know if you could, I think wind is probably the right way to take it, but especially if you were reading it in Hebrew, even if you said, oh, he means wind here with Noah, you would still be seeing the play on words. God is starting his creative process again, like he's kind of wiped the slate clean, and he's metaphorically, it's this new, like a new world that he's making. And of course, when you think of the story of Moses at the Red Sea, you have this strong wind that drives back the Red Sea to make, these absurdly miraculous, it says the water stood up on heaps on either side. So like as God is birthing a nation, like this creating a people, you have the same spirit and water thing going on. What do you mean? What do you mean? No, I'm saying, so when, just to part the sea, there's this talk of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is though, if after they got through, then it just filled back up.
Oh, yeah.
So this didn't just fill back up.
Yeah.
It made
Yeah, but there's a thematic thing that God is doing where water, in these cases, the abundance of water, the abyss, is death, it's decreation, it's things before God begins ordering and creating and bringing light and life. And every time you have this ruach doing something that starts doing that. So all that answer to your question, I'm not sure. I mean, things evaporate, the water goes back. Also, there's really good evidence that the face of the earth looks astonishingly different now. So even people who adhere to biblical creation tend to take the Pangea concept in science, the idea that all the continents were once together. Science gives it like a billion years of continental drift. Creationists typically think that, oh no, these are obviously catastrophic things, like these are probably some of the fountains of the deep breaking up and things start moving and shifting. So like now you have seas in different places, you have rivers in different places. I would imagine some water goes back underground where it should be. And oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, no one denies that. Like yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it could possibly, right, just be a supernatural thing that this guy got rid of someone.
Could be, but I mean, like I'm also so okay. Let's talk about the time frame because that's important. So verse 13. It came to pass in the 601st year, first month, first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. Noah removed the covering of the ark. Okay, verse 14, and in the second month, 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. So we're looking at about a year, all in total, which seems odd because you had 40 days, and then you had 150 days that the water is still doing its thing. And then you have like basically another half of a year until they step foot off the ark. So there's a lot of time going on here. If we think about it in like Sunday school kids picture book idea, like we're not getting the concept. Give the water half a year to recede, then you're looking at something much more reasonable. Okay, so verse 1, God remembered Noah. Now, of course, this does not mean God forgot Noah. Hebrew uses this a little differently than we would, than just like, oh, I just remembered. It's kind of like that you make mention of someone. The word mark comes up, like you're setting something aside, or the word even ends up being used for like a record or recorder, depending on what form it's in. So it's a much different word than we think of, like he considered Noah would kind of work. It's a word that doesn't really parallel in English too well. But of course, the implication is not that God forgot Noah at any point. He decided to start acting for Noah at this point. Verse 4, not vital to the story, but so the ark ends up upon the mountains of Ararat. So people will typically say, like, oh yeah, the ark settled on Mount Ararat, which is sort of right, but also not, because it's the mountains of Ararat. So there are claims by certain people who think that they discovered the ark. Oh yeah. Okay, so I didn't see the World War II, but I saw a documentary about it as well. And it's not like if it is that, it's not, there's not just some giant wooden boat sitting on top of a mountain and people are like, oh, what is this? Because this would be like 4,000 years ago. But there's something up there, because you basically have like this grid of metal fittings that seemed to hold wood in place, and the dimensions work pretty well with the ark. There's just like the wood doesn't survive that long. The tricky thing with is it just because it says Ararat, that's not like, oh cool, I know exactly where that is. We know where those mountains are, but it's a mountain range. So it's the difference between me saying, oh, the ark landed on Mount Everest versus it landed on the Himalayas, like a specific mountain versus the range. So we know the mountain range, we don't know the exact location. Some people think they have good archaeological evidence for it.
Is this the same documentary where it's Turkish area?
Yeah, yeah, that's in Turkey, yeah. So we had that sequence where Moses starts releasing birds. One, it's practical. Two, it seems like an odd little sequence. It's interesting, though. He releases the raven first, and the raven doesn't come back. And he releases the dove after that, and the dove comes back. So one, again, it's practical, but I think there's an interesting message going on there. So ravens are always, in every culture I've found, are symbolic of death and decay, for good reason. That's what they feed on. So the waters are still on the earth to some extent. You still have just the visceral, disgusting picture of what that would be, with dead things just floating everywhere, things rotted. It's not a fun picture. And the raven's at home. Death and decay is at home. It scavenges, it just eats dead things. So that doesn't come back. That stays out among the death and decay. The dove, the gentle bird that even in the Bible will often represent peace, or this, in the baptism of Jesus, the Spirit descends in the form of a dove. He will only be satisfied with the new creation that God is making. So even though it's very practical way for Noah to figure out outside of what he can just see out his window, what's it looking like, there's also some pretty interesting meaning going on there. Verse 20, just a brief note, we see worship again. Noah builds an altar. Last week we said it started with Seth, this more formal practice of worship. Noah continues this. He builds an altar and sacrifices something of those clean animals. And I think verse 21 takes a bit of a turn after the story we've just read. The Lord smelled a sweet savor, from the sacrifice. The Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. Why? Because they're great? Because the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. That seems like a potentially odd turn. Because not only have we been saying how good and righteous Noah is the whole time, now we see, okay, so he's still not perfect. Noah is still sinful humanity. And because of that, now God said, I'm not going to destroy the earth in this way again. And that should be jarring. That should be an obvious question there that won't get resolved for a minute, So we're not really going to get to the end of it this week. It's in the next series of stories. But that's interesting and important. Yeah. All right, so I need to move, but yeah, we need to do a couple things quickly. Okay, so we need to read chapter 9, verses 1 through 17. I'll just point out a few things about it if you have any immediate questions. And then I really want to read a very odd little story that is going to seem odd, but I think we need to get to it tonight. All right. Chapter 9, verses 1 through 17. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hands are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is in the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by his blood shall, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, of the beast of the earth, with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about that on a practical level, because they weren't eating animals before. I thought about it more on the symbolic level, or not symbolic, theological level. So, in line with what you said, did you notice at the beginning of the chapter, a twisted version of that initial mandate that we've been talking about since early Genesis. Like God's command, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over it. And it's the same command. Adam and Noah are the only times that the be fruitful and multiply command are given. And it's interesting that they're both charged with like populating the earth because of when they live. But Adam's is so, like, that's such a beautiful picture of creation when it's said to Adam. And now it's, oh, yeah, be fruitful, multiply. It's like, yeah, great, we've heard this before. This is awesome. It's a new creation. And animals that were once at peace with you, like, yeah, they're terrified of you now. And you can kill all of them and eat them. But I have some stipulations. Don't eat them with the blood. That'll become important later. By the way, if any of you kill each other, here's how we're going to deal with this. Like you get government systems in place. You get, it's capital punishment. Like that's what's happening there. So like, it's an inverted initial mandate. Like it definitely looks like God's design, but the effects of sin have just completely changed the game. So it's interesting. Yeah, there's a. Yeah. 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 Yep. Yeah, so that's not the key factor to what I was saying, like, he's not going to destroy creation because every thought of the heart is evil. But this is part of it. Like, this is a regulatory principle on that evil. So God is showing he's not flooding the earth again. He's going to step in a different direction, and the fullness of it will become clear later. But right now, like now you have some more law in place. So that's interesting. Oh, right. Right.
If they kill the pig, how are they going to reproduce?
That's a good question. I guess theoretically they could have. I mean, it's a male and female animal on a boat for like a year, so could be. Yeah. And also, like, so Noah and his family brought food on the ark. That's one of the details early on. Certain animals, like, I was surprised. I found this out way later in life than I should have, that like certain animals sort of have like a harvest season, which sounds crazy to us, but like, I guess as a not farmer, I didn't realize like our fall is spring? I don't know when. There's a certain time of year where lamb, sheep, goats, typically spring, Aries, right, okay. So spring is when lambs typically have their children. And you're like, oh, it's like a seasonal crop. Like, I don't even know what to do with that. It's an animal, but like you have a season. So yeah, they could have been on board with like when, even if you don't have them reproducing on the ark, you can kind of farm them a little bit in a sense, and like you kind of know when they're going to reproduce. So I have no idea, but those are some somewhat related thoughts. Yeah, okay, so yeah, we have under 10 minutes left. Okay. So we talked about everything in my notes except, the rainbow. Covenant not to destroy the earth. It's a sign of the covenant. It's interesting that, so you notice he doesn't actually use the word rainbow. So he hangs his bow in the sky. Now it's talking about a rainbow. I have heard a commentator say that, like, okay, so it's the same word that we have for, like in English, the bow, so think bow and arrow. One commentator was trying to link it to, a war bow, like God is done with this judgment, he hung his bow in the sky. I think that's one of the coolest interpretations of it. I don't see a lot of backing from other people, but it's the word, But also, like, if you're like, oh yeah, I wrapped a present, I put a bow on top, that has no correlation with a bow and arrow. So, like, words can mean similar in different things. I just think that's a cool thing to think. So, do what you will with that. Okay, we're going to read a really strange story quickly. And there doesn't have to be, you can ask some questions. I won't have a lot of answers for you. It's a strange story, but the point is important, especially as we close out Noah. Okay. So they're all off the ark. He made sacrifices. There's a covenant in place. Chapter 9, verse 18. The sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. Noah began to be a husbandman and planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. I'm sure you have some questions. The story kind of jumps right out at you, doesn't it? Why what?
Why did Noah declare that he did?
Yeah. So it's a little unclear precisely what happened. Some aspects are crystal clear. So Noah gets off the ark, he plants a vineyard. And as you're going through the whole initial mandate stuff of what humans are supposed to do, it seems like he's doing, he plants a garden in a sense. It's a vineyard, but thematically he's planting a garden. And you're going, okay, great. He's doing the thing. He's doing the human Adam take dominion thing, create life, do all this. And then he gets very drunk because he made grapes and made wine. So he immediately goes from Earth is new. He's clearly a symbol of another Adam, the first, sort of human. There are obvious parallels going on. He's given a similar mandate. It seems like he's doing good. He's been righteous in God's eyes this whole time. He's found grace in the sight of God. And then he gets drunk and is naked in his tent. His one son, Ham, comes in and sees him. Commentators really go on about what exactly is going on here. To me, a plain reading of the text is just that he sees him. He clearly goes out and tells his brothers. And his brothers take action and try to respect their father and cover him up in the most fitting way that they can. And Noah is furious with Ham afterwards. So it seems like the difference between the two sons showing their father, even in his sinful state at that time, they show him utmost respect and do what they can to cover up his sin in a sense. Whereas Ham, there's mockery, he went out and told his brothers, he didn't just cover him up and try to do that. So it's a very odd little story. Commentators try to take it different directions. To me, that's just the plain reading of the text. So what happened? Mockery of Noah in his state. Few other things that could be going on. And then you have a series of curses from Noah, which is interesting. Okay, so that's what happened. And you go like, okay, why do we need to know this? Noah lives about 300 years. Is this the story you want to tell us? Nothing else happened in the next 300 years before he died. Well, when you're reading the story, so what actually happened? Like, that was what happened. What's actually happening, this Noah, like this new first man, this new like symbol of Adam, given a similar mandate, he plants a garden. It's a great start. And he plants a garden, but he reaps sin. And then, you remember we talked last week at the birth of Noah. His father said, I'll call him Noah, which means comfort or peace or rest. He called him Noah because he would bring comfort to the people from the toil of the curse, basically. So he plants a garden, he reaps sin. Noah does not end up bringing comfort or rest to the people from the curse. As faithful as he has been, as obedient as he has been, he doesn't bring like an end to the curse. He doesn't bring rest from the curse. He participates in the curse, in the sin. Part of the sin curse was, the cursing of the ground, and then the fruit of the ground is how he sins. So, handful of closing thoughts. So, we're used to, we've probably heard Noah's Ark in various forms most of our lives. The story really presents God's salvation from judgment for those who find his grace. That's the line that's used of Noah the whole time. He found grace in the eyes of the Lord, something like that. 1 Peter 3 makes the connection that we are saved from God's wrath through Christ and compares it to those who are saved from this wrath by the ark. So the connection that the ark is a symbol of Christ has long been established in the Bible and church history. So you can kind of, while I fully believe this happened, you can also understand a symbol of Christ going on in the story here, being in the ark. So if you're not sure you're in Christ in the ark, that should be sorted out. But as we're considering what God is doing in humanity to deal with the serpent, the sin curse, the sin nature, to bring about what he originally designed for the earth, even a faithful, righteous man is not fully righteous. It's not Christ, So as we're progressing the biblical story along, it's very important, I think, that Noah was so good, he was so righteous, he was so obedient, he found so much grace in God's sight. And when you're looking for that person to bring comfort from the curse, he trips at the finish line in kind of spectacular fashion, especially because of the symbolism involved in what he's doing with creation. So those are my final thoughts on the flood. Anything we need to talk about before we go? Okay. So next week we have the Tower of Babel. That should be interesting. So next week is week 10. So it's okay. It's good. We'll end at a good spot. I have it mapped out. I had it mapped out before we started, but things changed. I have it mapped out again. We'll end in a good spot, and we're getting there. So let's close in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for your word. Lord, even if we were familiar with the events of this text that we looked at, I just pray you would help us to consider it with fresh eyes and consider the hope that you bring even in some of these dark situations that call for righteous judgment, that we would look to the ark, to Christ, to the grace that you give to save us from the judgment that we bring upon ourselves. So we thank you. Thank you for your word. Pray we would consider it throughout the week. Pray you'd bring us back safely. In your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen.